Golden Gate Bridge, San Francisco. History, engineering, and wonders of design. Towering above the shimmering waters of San Francisco Bay, painted in its iconic shade of international orange, stands one of the most recognizable, most photographed, and most fascinating engineering marvels in the world, the Golden Gate Bridge. Welcome to this deep dive into the legendary structure that not only connects two land masses, but connects history with modern engineering brilliance. In the next few minutes, we're going to unravel everything about the Golden Gate Bridge. From the politics and resistance during its conception, to the heroic feats of engineering behind its towers, and the stories, tragedies, and triumphs that made this bridge a living legend. So, grab your coffee, sit back, and let's begin our journey across one of mankind's greatest achievements. Okay, picture this. It's the early 1900s. San Francisco is bouncing back after the 1906 earthquake. The city's alive again, buildings going up, businesses booming. But there's one big problem: crossing the Golden Gate Strait. Back then, the only way to get from San Francisco to Marin County was by ferry. And we're not talking relaxing boat rides. These ferries were packed, overworked, and couldn't handle the city's growing traffic. Thousands waited in line every day. The system was failing. So, someone asked the big question: why not build a bridge across the Golden Gate? Sounds obvious now, but back then, it sounded crazy. The first person to seriously suggest it was James Wilkins, a newspaper editor, not an engineer. In 1916, he published an article proposing a suspension bridge. People were intrigued, but also scared. The military said it would be a security risk. Ferry companies panicked about losing business. And everyday folks? They doubted it could even be done. The strait was nearly a mile wide, with wild currents, strong winds, and thick fog. Oh, and it was estimated to cost $100 million in the 1920s. Totally unrealistic. The dream started fading. Until Joseph Strauss showed up. Not your average engineer. Strauss was intense, passionate, and fearless. He didn't just think the bridge was possible, he thought it was necessary. He had no final design, just a vision, charm, and unstoppable drive. And that's when the dream turned into a mission. And that is where the real story begins. The visionary, Joseph Strauss. Meet Joseph Strauss, poet, dreamer, engineer. Now that's not your typical combo, right? But Strauss wasn't your typical man either. Before anyone had even dared to imagine a bridge spanning the wild, churning waters of the Golden Gate Strait, Strauss had already built over 400 drawbridges across the country. He was a man obsessed with movement, with the poetry of steel and motion. He didn't just want to connect places, he wanted to conquer the impossible. And then came his Everest. The Golden Gate Bridge. At the time, just the idea of it felt insane. A bridge across one of the most treacherous bodies of water in the world? With powerful tides, frequent fog, brutal winds, and deep, unstable waters? Most engineers laughed. Politicians hesitated. Locals doubted. But Strauss? He believed. So, he got to work. His first design was, well, let's just say it was more practical than pretty. Clunky. Boxy. Functional. It looked like a railroad trestle on steroids. Strong, sure, but it had zero charm. Zero elegance. And people? Yeah, they weren't impressed. Public opinion was clear: we're not putting that eyesore at the gateway to San Francisco. But here's where Strauss showed what real leadership looks like. Instead of clinging to his own vision, he called for help. He brought in people smarter than himself in specific areas: designers, architects, mathematicians. Because he knew, if this bridge was going to change the world, it couldn't just be functional. It had to be beautiful. It had to be bold. It had to be brilliant. Enter Leon Moisseiff, a suspension bridge expert from New York. Leon had just worked on the Manhattan Bridge and understood how to build long-span suspension structures that looked light as air, but were strong as steel. He took Strauss's rigid blueprint and reshaped it into something graceful, something sleek. He gave the Golden Gate its now iconic suspension design. Suddenly, the bridge didn't just look strong, it looked like it could fly. Then came Irving Morrow, the quiet visionary architect. Morrow wasn't a bridge guy. He was an artist. But Strauss brought him in because this wasn't just a piece of infrastructure anymore, this was a symbol. And symbols need style. Morrow introduced Art Deco elements, the vertical fluting on the towers, the clean lines, the modern silhouette. But his boldest move? The color. He picked International Orange, a striking, unforgettable hue that cut through San Francisco's infamous fog. Bright enough to be seen, bold enough to be remembered. And today, that color is as iconic as the bridge itself. But behind the scenes, far from the cameras, the reporters, the headlines, was a man you probably haven't heard of. Charles Alton Ellis. Ellis was a mathematical genius, a structural engineer with a mind like a supercomputer. He wasn't flashy. He didn't write poetry. He didn't give public speeches. But he was the man who made the numbers work. Ellis spent years running the structural calculations, designing the load-bearing capacities, solving the forces of tension and compression by hand. There were no computers back then. Just slide rules, graph paper, and brainpower. He worked night after night, week after week. Sometimes 70, 80, even 100 hours a week, calculating every force, every bolt, every cable tension. He collaborated long distance with Moisseiff, double-checking every figure. But as the project neared completion, something strange happened. Joseph Strauss, for reasons still debated, cut off communication with Ellis. He removed him from the project. Ellis's name was erased from official documents. No credit. No applause. Nothing. But here's the truth, without Charles Ellis, the Golden Gate Bridge doesn't stand. It was his calculations, his unwavering precision, that ensured this bold dream wouldn't collapse under its own weight. And though history forgot him for a while, engineers never did. So, when the bridge was finally completed in 1937, it wasn't just a marvel of engineering, it was the result of a powerful collaboration. Strauss got the fame. Moisseiff gave it elegance. Morrow gave it style. Ellis gave it strength. They didn't just build a bridge. They built a masterpiece, a perfect fusion of vision, art, and cold, hard math. And for San Francisco, for the world, that bridge became more than just a crossing. It became a symbol of what humans can achieve when they dream big and build together. And that was just the beginning. Okay, so the bridge design? Incredible. But building it? That was where things got real. Because now, it wasn't just about steel and wire. It was about people. Real humans, doing dangerous work every single day. We're talking about men climbing hundreds of feet in the air, with no harnesses, balancing on narrow beams, swaying in the wind. One wrong step? That's it. Back then, construction sites were brutal. The common saying? One man dies for every $1 million spent. And this was a $35 million project, do the math. But the chief engineer, Joseph Strauss, wasn't having it. He wanted safety, and he meant it. He brought in hard hats, brand new at the time. He set up safety lines, scaffold walkways, and most importantly, he installed a safety net under the bridge. That net? Saved 19 lives. They even had a nickname, the Halfway to Hell Club. Because they fell and lived to tell the tale. Still, tragedy struck. On February 17, 1937, part of the scaffold collapsed. 10 workers fell into the bay. None survived. It was the worst accident of the entire build. But even that didn't stop progress. They pushed forward. Piece by piece, bolt by bolt, they made the impossible real. By April 1937, the bridge was done. And when it finally opened, over 200,000 people walked across it. No cars. Just feet. It was a celebration and a victory. Not just over distance, but over danger, doubt, and death itself. Building the bridge, a feat of courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice. The construction of the Golden Gate Bridge is one of the most remarkable feats of engineering in the 20th century, but it wasn't just a triumph of design and technology. It was also a story of human grit, determination, sacrifice, and vision. Building this iconic bridge, which spans the entrance to San Francisco Bay, meant confronting some of the harshest working conditions imaginable, from powerful tides and freezing fog to dizzying heights and deadly accidents. Breaking ground, from vision to reality. When construction began in January 1933, many believed the project was impossible. The idea of building a suspension bridge across the mile-wide Golden Gate Strait, with its ferocious winds, deep water, and seismic risks, was considered a pipe dream. But Chief Engineer Joseph Strauss, a visionary with relentless determination, led the charge. The project kicked off with massive cliff blasting on both the San Francisco and Marin sides. Workers used explosives to carve anchorages out of solid rock, creating the foundations that would hold the enormous tension of the suspension cables. The anchorages were not just large, they were monumental in scale, requiring the pouring of thousands of tons of concrete, hauled in under difficult conditions. Engineering the towers and spinning the cables. Once the towers were under construction, workers faced the dangerous task of working hundreds of feet above the turbulent water. Each of the two 746-foot-high towers had to be constructed with painstaking care. Steel was lifted into place piece by piece using derricks, and riveters toiled in deafening noise, high winds, and freezing temperatures. Perhaps the most intricate part of the process was the creation of the main suspension cables, still among the largest ever made. Over 80,000 miles of wire were hand-spun using an innovative spinning wheel technique. The operation required immense coordination and skill, especially as workers stood on catwalks strung between the towers, swaying in the wind. They spun the wires across the strait with an almost surgical level of precision, layering thousands of strands together to form each massive cable. Floating the deck into place. Unlike modern bridges built with cranes and modern machinery, the Golden Gate's roadway sections were floated in by barge and then hoisted up using massive cranes. These deck segments had to be joined with millimeter-level precision, despite the ever-present fog, wind, and shifting currents. Foghorns often served as the workers' only guide during low visibility, giving this stage of the project an almost eerie, otherworldly quality. Unprecedented focus on safety. One of the most revolutionary aspects of the Golden Gate Bridge project was its focus on worker safety, thanks largely to Joseph Strauss. At a time when worker deaths were an accepted part of large-scale construction, Strauss implemented a series of unheard-of safety protocols. Workers wore hard hats, a novelty at the time, and were required to use respirators and glare-free goggles. But Strauss's most important innovation was the installation of a safety net, suspended underneath the bridge's deck. This net was made of manila rope and extended 10 feet wider than the bridge and 15 feet longer. It saved the lives of 19 men, who fell from the bridge but were caught before hitting the water. These lucky survivors became known as the Halfway to Hell Club, a badge of honor for those who came so close to tragedy. Tragedy strikes. Despite these efforts, the bridge was not immune to tragedy. In February 1937, near the end of construction, a section of scaffold collapsed and took 10 workers down with it. The net failed to catch them. This tragic event brought the total death toll to 11 workers, a number that, though heartbreaking, was remarkably low for such a high-risk project during that era. Comparable projects often saw dozens, even hundreds, of deaths. Hope in the Depression era. Perhaps one of the most overlooked aspects of the Golden Gate Bridge project is its social and economic impact. Construction began at the height of the Great Depression, a time when unemployment was rampant and despair widespread. This project employed thousands of workers, providing not only a paycheck but also a sense of pride and purpose. For many, working on the bridge wasn't just a job, it was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of human determination to overcome even the darkest times. Let's rewind to May 27, 1937, the Golden Gate Bridge's big opening day. Over 200,000 people walked, danced, and roller skated across it. The energy was amazing. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, all the way from Washington, hit a telegraph key to officially open the bridge. There were flyovers, marching bands, and fireworks that night. And the next day, cars started crossing. That day changed San Francisco forever. After the Golden Gate Bridge opened, it quickly became an icon. At first, about 10,000 cars crossed daily. Now, it's over 100,000. That means non-stop maintenance, especially repainting to keep it safe and sharp. Tolls went fully automated, and earthquake upgrades were added. Most importantly, suicide prevention measures came in, including a huge steel safety net installed in the 2020s to save lives. Cultural impact and legacy. The Golden Gate Bridge isn't just a bridge, it's a pop culture icon. It's been in over 1,000 movies and shows, from Vertigo to Godzilla and X-Men. You've seen it blown up on screen more than once. It's everywhere: logos, commercials, art. With over 10 million visitors yearly, it's one of the most photographed spots on Earth. Destroyed in films but standing strong in real life, that's the Golden Gate. Modern-day engineering and preservation. Hard to believe, but the Golden Gate Bridge from the 1930s is still going strong. After the Loma Prieta quake, it got a major seismic upgrade with lightweight panels and wind tests. They added a steel safety net to save lives. Special lead-free paint keeps its iconic orange fresh. It's nearly 9,000 feet long, towers 736 feet tall, and has cables made from 80,000 miles of wire. With this care, it's built to last, evolving and enduring like a living thing. The Golden Gate Bridge has more stories than most. The first to cross. A woman named Blanche Payson. In 1987, the 50th anniversary walk nearly crushed the bridge from the crowd. That's how much it means to people. Behind the scenes, crews work high above the ocean, fighting fierce winds to keep it standing. It's seen joy and pain, and still watches the tides below. Why does the Golden Gate still captivate us? It's not just engineering, it's courage and bold vision. It proves even the impossible deserves a chance. More than steel, it's a symbol of strength, beauty, and resilience. It shows bridges aren't just structures, they're dreams built to last. Thank you for joining us on this long journey across the Golden Gate Bridge. If you love the depth of this documentary, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more epic deep dives into the wonders of our world. Until next time, keep exploring.